Okay, so we've got a 2014 F-150 in here. It came in for some off-road lighting. One of the things the customer wanted was for for two of the pods to come on automatically with the high beams. So to accomplish that, we've got to go in here to All Data and I found it earlier, so I can go to recents. Look over here in diagrams. It's one thing I love about All Data Pro is they've got diagrams for just about anything. So we go into the headlight diagram, and this is where we find out. So I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's a little note right here that says with HID and without HID. Now ours is a kind of a base model, so it's without HID. So you're looking for this number 2 that's right here, and that takes you over to right headlamp, left headlamp. So know that the high beam is going to be a violet and orange wire on the right side, which is the passenger side, and then I'm sorry, that was the left side's violet and orange. The right headlamp is a gray and brown. And usually what I'll do is I'll look for what actually powers these two wires. So that's going to go to this wire, this wire. And what we're going to do is we're going to power, because these pods, I tested them already, they only draw about 1 amp. So there's no need with something with that low of a current draw. 1 amp, so they're drawing about 12 watts of power, which is not a lot. We could easily add that on to the standard headlight without any real issues. So we just have to find, sometimes you can find like a relay wire or a fuse or something like that. In this case, in here it says FET, which is field effect transistor, which basically means that these are controlled by a small electronic relay, so it's not something that we can like tap into. Okay, so on this one, sometimes there's a fuse that only has power when the high beams are on. In some vehicles, that's not the case here. The fuse has power all the time, and then the relay portion of it is downstream from that. So we're going to just tap into the high beam wire for each side and power one pod from each side. So we're going to look for, on the left headlamp, okay, on the right headlamp, passenger side, violet and orange, driver side, gray and brown. So what I'll do is I'll tap into those and run a dedicated ground wire over to the battery for each of these, and then they'll come on automatically with the high beams. So on the driver's side, All Data told us that it was a gray wire with a brown stripe, which would be kind of hard to pick up on the camera, but it's this guy right here, gray wire, brown stripe. All we're going to do, this is fairly simple here, since I'm not running a relay, since these things don't draw hardly anything for power. I'm going to cut into this wire, just like so. And you strip back just a little bit of the insulation on both sides. And then I'll grab the other wire that we're going to use, and we'll use our little B-crimps, these guys, and I'll crimp one of those, and then we'll run the power over to our little pods, which are right over here. Okay, so I've got a roll of just 18 gauge silicone coated stranded wire, and which 18 gauge is actually a little bit overkill for something like this, but that's okay. It's always okay to go a little bit bigger as opposed to going too small. And take my crimper here, and you get a nice tight crimp on the wire, and then you also get a nice tight crimp on the strain relief, and then you add your heat shrink, which is the part I used to always forget. shrink on there. This heat shrink I like. It is a marine grade heat shrink and it's adhesive lined, meaning that when you warm it up with a heat gun or similar heat source, it activates the glue that's inside there to make it basically a watertight connection. So it starts with something like this, and it curls it around what I've always heard it called a B crimp, because if you looked at it from the side here, like the cross section, it kind of gives that B shape where the two outside bits come and clamp down on the wire. So that gives it a very strong, secure kind of crimp. So then we'll shrink that down with a heat gun, and then we just got to route this wire over to this wire, and then what I'll do is put a barrel connector on here, and then we just have to run a ground wire from each of these. We run ground wires over directly to the battery ground. So all I'm doing here is getting the ground wire kind of set. So the power wire is going to come from the headlight kind of around the bumper, and then everything's going to be bundled into here so that we have one main bundle of wire that comes out to power all this stuff that's going on the back side of this brush guard. But the ground wire needs to be this long. You just kind of get a rough idea of how long it needs to be, and then give yourself a few extra inches, diggity, and then cut it off there. So that'll go to there, and then we just repeat the process on the passenger side. Okay, the ground is on. We're just going to go activate the high beams on the truck and make sure that the pods are working as well. Okay, so everything's working. We just have to tidy up the wiring. It's a little bit of a tedious process because I'm very picky about how my stuff looks when it's done. But I'm going to get to it with just some wire loom, zip ties, some of our cloth tape, and that'll tie everything together and make it look like a nice OEM grade harness. And then we're pretty much done with this one. Okay, so I've got the length of wire I need. We're going to put some sheathing on it. There's some wire loom just to protect it, make it look nicer. But first, we're going to, so this is a bullet style connector, just this round barrel thing, and plugs into here. I always like to use a female connection on the supply side and a male connection on the component side, just so that my convention is the same, and also the way that these covers work, the female one's completely covered, so if you have a live wire dangling around, it's at least insulated, it's not going to blow the fuse. Whereas if you had this as your live wire, the feed from the battery or the whatever, if it comes loose or something, then this is going to like touch something and spark and be a fire hazard or whatever. And of course my trusty dielectric grease. That. Then we'll repeat that process on the passenger side. Then I just got to run my ground wires.